There's so many of you. I'm so excited. I didn't really know. Ashley, we just threw this together a few weeks ago. I just want you to understand how this came together. All right, we were in an AACC meeting last month, right, our meeting, and this is some stuff that I presented to our counseling students. And when I was finished, what they said was, this is not just for counseling majors. Our whole school needs to hear this. And so I just want you to know that this grew out of their heart of love for you. Like they want their peers to understand some of these same struggles. And so really, they're reaching out to you guys. And I just thought that was really neat that they would throw this event together and invite all of you. So we just want you to know that we're really excited that you're here. I had my own little set of trauma last week. I wasn't even here for a whole week. And my intention was to completely rework this PowerPoint and make it more applicable, to a broader audience. I didn't have time to do that. It's just exactly, so if you see me skipping a couple of slides here and there, don't worry about it. It's stuff you don't care about, okay? It was teaching stuff. So, but I'm just going to kind of start in the way we did in that meeting. But here's the thing, in a Baptist College of Florida, all right, we have a lot of emphasis here on spiritual development. It's the most important thing you can possibly do. Your relationship with Jesus, from the day you're born till the day you die, that is preeminent. It's the most important thing. But sometimes there are times, specific times in your life of transition, trials, trauma that come along, and you find yourself stuck in that relationship with Christ. And if you are not aware of some of the emotional, the psychological things that can be going on at the same time, you start to, if there's a lot of self-condemnation that can come, there must just be something wrong with me. Why can't I can't get this thing right between me and Jesus? Why can't I just seem to make any progress? Why do I feel stuck? All right? And sometimes it might just be that the issue's not spiritual. It's not that you're not wanting to move forward in your relationship with Christ, but something's got you hung up. Something's got you stuck. So, saying that, all right, what I really just want to talk about is you guys. All right, and college students in general, what are some of the broad things that you guys are dealing with right now? And who knows, you may hear something that you feel like specifically addresses yourself, or you might be like, that's totally my roommate, I'm fine, but oh my gosh, I hope you're listening. All right, but just, so it's not for any one person, these are broad strokes, all right? So we're talking about college students in general. And this talk specifically started with discussing the idea of going into college counseling. That if you were, as a counseling major, moving towards this age group as your future ministry, that's really what we were talking about that day, okay? All right, so what are some of the developmental factors? Let's just give a little bit of backdrop, all right? Developmentally, all of us develop. All we mean by that word development is just that you're moving forward in some way every day. All right, there are certain stages that we all pass through as we're growing up. When we're a tiny little baby, you may have heard of Erickson. All right, he's a psychologist, Erik Erikson. All right, tiny babies have to go through a crisis stage called trust versus mistrust. All right, when you're born, you get hungry, you cry, and if someone comes and feeds you, someone changes your diaper, someone takes care of you, you learn that basically the world is a place where I can trust people. All right. If you have needs and those needs don't get met, all right, we call that a crisis. All right, and you may develop distrust. This is when you're a tiny baby. We're talking about memories before you even have memories. All right. So certain stages, you move forward from that, and you're going to go through certain developmental stages as you go along in life. All right. At this age in college, your psychosocial stage is called intimacy versus isolation. Intimacy versus isolation. It basically means your primary goal in life is figuring out who are you going to be connected to for life. Now, anybody had any conversations lately about a best friend, about a boyfriend? Do we talk about this ever? You probably don't ever bring this up, right? We don't talk about who's dating who or who's in a relationship with who or the fight that you had with your roommate. It's your whole world. Okay? You cannot go 10 minutes on this campus without hearing somebody have something to say about a best friend or a boyfriend or a fight with, because you are relational. Right? It's so true, right? Okay, so the idea here is, okay, and here's the panic mode. If you're on a therapist side of the room, okay, and you're listening, all right, I hear this all the time. Here's the anxiety. I'm going to be alone forever. No, you're not. I try to tell you. No. It's going to be okay. Yes, I am. I'm going to be alone forever. It's the fear, right? It's the driving fear that moves you to get out of bed every day and figure out what are you going to do about it today? Because I got to get that somebody. I got to get somebody. Somebody's got to be my best friend, and then somebody's got to be the one. Okay? Because this is what you're looking for. All right? I've either had intimacy in my life or I'm isolated. There's this awareness at this stage that there's not much in between. You either pick these people and you bind yourself to them for life, or you end up like that one kid you knew from college, that Uncle Bobby that never got married. There's this fear that you're going to be that one, right? That makes it all the way through college, that makes it through this season, and never does really connect. Okay? So developmentally, this is the stage that you're at. Intimacy versus isolation. It lasts from about age 17. Basically, it ends when you get married. That's really kind of just being practical about it. It's like you finally get married, and then you get to move to the next stage, which we're going to talk a little bit about that stage too, because some of you have already moved on. Okay, but one of the things that happens in intimacy versus isolation, you think about this idea of establishing independence from a family of origin. You've grown up all of your life in an environment where you sort of knew what the rules were. You knew who was, if you had something go wrong, you called mom, or you called dad, or you talked to sister, or you had these friends in high school that were you had this crowd collected around you. You push all of that away and you embark out on this journey, and here you are, probably for the first time in your life, starting over, really, really alone. All right? And looking around at a bunch of other people who are doing the same thing, and you're all kind of wigged out, and you're trying to figure out what to do with each other. Okay? But you're establishing your own independence. So part of you is saying, stop. Okay? I don't need so much family around me. I need a little more independence. Praise Jesus. All right? So as you're pushing one group away, you're over here going, enough, Mom. And then you're over here going, please, somebody love me. Enough, Mom. Please, somebody love me. Do you feel that? Okay, it's transition. There is the big word for you right now is transition. I'm trying to push away from my family of origin and establish my own independence while I figure out who am I going to attach to for life, all right, if I don't want to live at home for the rest of my life. And then you're also growing in interdependence with your family, peers, and significant others to establish long-term relationships. Interdependence, that means just because I don't live with mom and dad doesn't mean I never talk to them, but how does that work exactly? Like, mom wants me to call every day. I'm kind of good with once a week. Mom wants me to come home every weekend, right? I'm kind of good with once a month. I have, interdependence. It doesn't mean I want you completely out of my life, but we're looking for that balance. Right? I'm trying to figure out who I am apart from you. And then as I learn who I am, how does this new person, how does this adult me work in relationship with other people? All right. The other thing that is going on is just pure transition. All right? Not only developmentally are you transitioning in this intimacy versus isolation stage, but you're just literally transitioning. Who's from Graceville? Is there anybody? Aja's from Chipley. We'll give it to Aja. Okay. Aja's sort of from here. The rest of you, not so much. You're here for 2, 3, 4 years, and you disappear. All right? And you're gone. And there's a new bunch of y'all sitting right here. You come here to leave. Right? You're not coming here to settle down. Everybody here knows that you're on your way out, we hope, from the time you get here. This is the goal. We're not here to stay. We don't want to move to Graceville, Florida. Am I right? All right. So as you are transitioning from the accountability of home, all right, think about this for a minute. For the first time in your life, you have to wake yourself. Nobody's there to set your alarm in the morning. Nobody's there to go, your alarm's been going off for 20 minutes. Get out of bed. Mama's not there. Mama's also not there to say, it's 11, go to sleep. You got to get some rest. All right? So for the first time in your life, you're making your own decisions about your health habits, sleeping habits, eating habits, who you hang out with. There's nobody standing over you telling you what to do. So you're transitioning from the accountability of home into increased uncertainty and potential behavior choices. Not only do you have less accountability, suddenly you have more things presented to you. It's 11, we could go to Dothan now. Why not? There's a late movie. Let's go. All right? So you have, as the opportunities increase, the accountability is decreasing. That's part of the transition. That's part of why peer pressure comes back. You hadn't felt peer pressure since the 7th grade. Suddenly, your freshman year of college, it's back. All right. And then this consuming need for defining relationships and establishing intimate connections, that also creates increased peer pressure because there's the peer pressure to need to connect. Let me move forward a slide. I need to see something real quick. Okay, yeah. I'm going to talk about this here for a minute. All right. The increased peer pressure. Now, we know Baptist College of Florida, y'all are all good kids, right? Everybody here. Say yes. Everybody here is a really good kid. All right, really, you are. All right, we don't expect, we're going to talk a little bit about statistics and numbers on broad population campuses, blah, blah, blah. All right, we don't expect our numbers here to be the same. But we also don't expect to be stupid, all right, to think that there's no such thing in this group as peer pressure. All right, so you've got all kinds of decreased accountability, all kinds of increased potential for making poor choices. All right, and then you have this intense need to fit in, to belong, to create intimacy, to not be alone. All those things come together and make this perfect storm for just getting yourself into a lot of trouble, just making poor choices. Anybody ever made a poor choice or two? Not me. Yes, who hasn't, right? We make poor, because we're just people. All right, we're just people, and we have this intense need to fit in and to belong. The stage just before intimacy versus isolation is called identity versus identity diffusion. It basically lasts from about 7th grade to your senior year. It's kind of what we call adolescence, okay? It's basically where you're deciding, who am I? How many of you have changed your major more than one time? I changed mine 6 times my freshman year. Between freshman and sophomore year, 6 different majors. All right, why? Because I was still in identity versus identity diffusion. I really hadn't even transitioned yet, all right, when I entered college. I was young. I was like 17 when I first started college. But it's still, I hadn't really gotten there yet. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I'm paying people money, right? And I'm supposed to be making this big, important decision, and I don't even know. It's like creates an anxiety attack in my heart because I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I'm still struggling with that. I have never completely resolved that, and it's still left over from adolescence. So you will see kids who come into college who are still struggling with, who am I? You ever ask yourself that? God, what is it that you really want me to do? It wasn't but a year or 2 ago, maybe, I did a BCM talk on finding God's will for my life. This guy in chapel has been talking about that. Why do college students obsess over finding God's will for my life? Because I'm not sure. I don't really know who I am. I'm trying to just really get that nailed down. And so especially in the earlier years of college, you will see people really struggling to form that identity, all right? All right. There's also transitional factors that have to do with increased societal pressure. Anybody feeling pressured? Why do you feel pressure? There's all these demands in college. See, suddenly you don't have your parents telling you what to do, but you have more homework to get done. You've got lots of friends that you want to hang out with because this is important, right? We've got to make these connections, and yet I've got all this homework to get done. And now people are expecting you to do homework at this college level, right? It's this whole new level of intensity that you're supposed to bring. Oh, but I stayed up till 2 o'clock in the morning last night talking out in the day room. So I didn't get anything done. Oh, but I've got to turn in this paper. I've got a RAFL test tomorrow. I didn't even study for it. There's all increased societal pressure. People expect you to be an adult, like overnight, right? Like your senior year, you're still a kid. Mama's waking you up. She's doing your laundry. She's setting limits. And you're like, no, Mom, no more. And you push off and you go to college, and now there's nobody to tell me what to do. And I didn't even study for that test. But does Raythel care? No, he doesn't. You can edit that, because I'm just kidding. He does care. All right. But the point is that you have all these new pressures on you as you transition into what is supposed to be adulthood. People just expect a different level from you now, right? So you've got this balance. You can feel the balance of that, of I have to do it without any accountability, and it has to be better than anything I've ever done before. And that's hard. All right, there's a lot of pressure that comes at this stage of your life. There's also increasing expectations along with a new awareness of both the passing of time and the permanent consequences of life choices. Anybody feel that graduation date coming up? No, she starts having a panic attack right here. This is right where she started having a panic attack before. All right, the graduation date starts to come up. Let me tell you what the next stage is. All right, the next stage after intimacy versus isolation is called generativity versus stagnation. Am I going to count for something? Am I ever going to do anything really significant? As you get closer to your graduation date, you begin to ask yourself this question. Maybe you've already found the one. All right, you kind of got that settled. You went through all that drama of the 13th grade, and you're kind of past it finally, and everybody's sort of settled out, and you've got your relationships established, and maybe you've even attached yourself to someone and you've said, I think he's the one. I think she's the one. All right, so you've moved past that intimacy versus isolation stage, and now you're like, oh my gosh, now I got to graduate. That was a fast 4 years. You come in thinking it's never going to end, and you go out thinking, that was a whirlwind. Now I have to actually prove that I'm going to do something with my life. I've got this piece of paper, and what am I going to prove to the world? So there's this awareness here. There's the passing of time. And then at the same time, you've got this awareness of the permanent consequences of every choice you make. Remember, we talked about decreased accountability. There's nobody telling you what to do. And yet you know that the choices you're making right now, all right, who am I going to marry? Who are going to be my friends for life? I'm still best friends with my college roommate. Yes, I am. That was a long time ago. These are important things that you're doing right now. All right, the stuff that you're choosing, it is not your imagination that you are defining yourself right now. You're not making that up. It's real. All right? Right now, this is the season of life where every choice you make, you are defining yourself. And there's this sense that these consequences get bigger. Right? Now I'm choosing jobs. I'm choosing life partners. I'm choosing all these different things. And everything's just a bigger deal. All right, so all this transition going on comes with some major issues for college students. So what we want to do is just talk through some of these things that can come up and set you back and get you stuck. All right? Remember, I want you to keep in mind, developmentally where you are, I'm looking for the one. That's mostly where most of you are. All right? Developmentally. Transitionally, you've got one hand. We're saying this. You still take your laundry home, right? You go home to see Mama, and it's like, hey, Mom, back off. I'm only coming home once a month. Oh, but by the way, my whole trunk's full of laundry. Could you please do it for me? Okay, so you've got this one hand on your family, like, I don't need you too much, but don't let me go. You know, I still need you. I really do. And yet I'm reaching forward transitionally out here and going, but I really kind of like to start my new family. What is that going to look like? Probably going to have to do your own laundry. Just a reality check there. Okay. All right, so all these different things going on at the same time. All right, depression is a huge issue for college students. Maybe you've never experienced depression, but maybe you know someone who has. All right, some of these things, like I said, and we said it jokingly, but like I said, some of these things you may say, not so much. But it's good to know, because as you look around, you may see warning signs in some of your friends, and you might be the one, just because you sat and listened to this for a minute, to go, you know what, let's go see the campus counselor. We have a campus counselor here. Did y'all know that? Most everybody knows that, right? We have a campus counselor. So there's help out there. All right, depression is huge. Listen to this number, 30% of college students, 1 in 3, basically, 30% of college students report feelings of depression. Now, this is not just like I got sad. This is like depression. All right, what does depression look like? It looks like sleeping in and skipping all your classes. It looks like getting behind in your schoolwork. We're talking about the kind of depression that has serious effects. It has the ability to really create setbacks with the goals that you've set for yourself. I mean, you're paying money to take these classes. And then you get so low, you don't even go, maybe so discouraged that you drop a class here and there and have to retake it. Okay, if you want a practical definition at your stage, that's one. All right, if you find yourself or somebody that you know that's sleeping in all the time, skipping all their classes, that's not good. It's not healthy. All right. It can look like sadness. It can look like hopelessness. In guys, often it looks like irritability. Girls, we cry. Guys, not so much. Guys get grumpy. All right, just FYI. Guys don't have to cry. The guys say, I've never been depressed. I've never cried ever. Well, maybe you hadn't, but I've seen you grumpy. That's the same thing. It's called depression. All right. It can look like guilt. It can look like just low energy, just fatigued all the time. It can result in lowered academic performance, and it's also linked to smoking. It's linked to high-risk behaviors such as binge drinking and unsafe sex. This is what happens when you get depressed. All right, depression is most often linked to, I'm terrified that I'm going to be left alone. I will do whatever it takes to feel connected to other people. What do we do when we're not thinking clearly and we need to go be connected to other people? It's called partying and sex. This is what college kids do, all right? It's everywhere. This is what they're attempting, all right? They're in unhealthy ways. They're trying to meet that need, and they're doing it in ways that are obviously not going to work out so good, all right? But this is, if you could get past the face of what it looks like, all right? If you could get past the face of just thinking of the typical college student as a constant party waiting to happen, all right? What is just under the surface of that? It's that need for love. It's that need for connection. It's the need for attachment, for affection, all right? And there's terror there that it's not going to happen, and so I'm willing to participate in high-risk behaviors in order to get some semblance of that in my life. 6%. Listen to this number. That's huge. 6% of college students have contemplated suicide within the past year. Now, remember we said we're not going to assume these numbers are the same on this campus. All right, I'm not going to walk around BCF and go, wow, 6 out of 100. But do I think that there are people on this campus who have contemplated suicide in the past year? Yeah. Sometimes I wonder if the numbers aren't higher than we estimate them. Why would college students struggle that much? 6%. That's much higher, by the way, than just the general average, of all population. We're talking about a spike here. In college, suicidal thoughts spike. Why? It's all this stuff we're talking about. You think about all those things we just finished talking about, all that transitional, the stress, being away from home, I'm all by myself, I'm isolated, and then what if my boyfriend dumps me? Now I'm feeling worthless. Then I start to feel hopeless, and then I start skipping class, and then I start failing classes, and then my dad finds out I failed class, and then I start hanging with some people who do kind of accept me, and when I'm with them, I have fun, and it feels good, but I'm still failing at everything, and now I'm just worthless. I'm no good. Do you hear all of that? There's just a lot of setup there, all right? So being aware of it, not only in your own mind, because what you want to do is you want to cut it off early, all right? You want to be able to cut these things off early before they turn into true depression, but also just being aware of these things for your friends, because even if you're not struggling with it, there are people out there who are. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among college students. It's right behind binge drinking type behaviors, like car accidents related to drinking, and then just death by intoxicated coma-induced stuff. But anyway, right behind that is suicide. All right, second one, anxiety. What does anxiety feel like? Death. Yeah, butterflies in your stomach, just nervousness, heart pounding, sweaty palms, all right? Most people describe it like a shortness of breath or lump in your throat. anxiety, all right? That's stress. Stress is the word we use for sort of low-level, prolonged anxiety. It's usually associated with external things pressing in on me. Anxiety can come from the inside because I'm not dealing with the way I cope, or it can come from the outside because today just is literally harder than yesterday was, you know. But stress and anxiety are highly connected. When my stress levels goes up, if I'm prone to anxiety, my anxiety levels may also increase at the same time. So what's creating all of this anxiety? We have rigorous collegiate expectations. I hope this is harder than high school. It's supposed to be, okay? But that creates stress. Relational conflicts. It's very stressful to be in a fight at this stage. It's very, very stressful to be in a fight. Why? Intimacy versus isolation. It's because it's the most important thing to you right now, all right? So when those relationships are disrupted, your anxiety levels go off the charts. I would say your anxiety is more likely to be related to relational stuff than it is to schoolwork. Anybody ever feel more stressed out by relationships than you do by a test? It's not true of everybody. Some people get really worked up over schoolwork. I mean, that happens too. But if I were to take a poll, I would say it's probably 80-20. I'd say probably 80% of you would say relationships stress me out way more than schoolwork does. All right? Because that's where you're at. That's that developmental stage. All right? Anxiety from just being separated from your family and friends. Do you stay in touch with high school friends? Do you stay in touch with your parents? Do you stay in touch with siblings? There's some anxiety there. You may not even realize it because you are trying to push away. You may not even realize that you've increased your anxiety because even though you want to push away from your family of origin and you're needing that independence, it's still stressful to be on your own. It's very stressful. Oh, here's a big one. Worry in regard to finances. Anybody had any anxiety over finances recently? Absolutely. It's stressful. This is a big deal. Anxiety is also linked with high-risk behaviors. All right? Anxiety is linked to high-risk behaviors. It's linked to depression. In other words, if you're already feeling depressed, you're also likely to be feeling some anxiety to go along with that. Part of what people do when they're drinking or doing drugs is called self-medicating. All right? Alcohol is a depressant. If you're feeling anxious, okay, it'll make you feel better. Doesn't mean it's a good idea, but to some degree, for some people, it works. Same thing with some drugs. People are often self-medicating. They're trying to cope with these intolerable emotions. You've got all of this sadness, hopelessness, fear, and then anxiety welling up, and the drugs and alcohol are normally, all right, just abundant at this stage, and so people are using them trying to suppress that intolerable emotion. I can't deal with that, so I'm going to take something, I'm going to do something that makes me feel better. Anxiety brings up the point of the need for stress management strategies. What do you do to help relieve your stress? What are some things that you do? Exercise is huge, probably the number one answer. When you're stressed out, go for a run, go work out. When you work out, you release endorphins into your body. Endorphins are like a natural high. They're a chemical in your body that naturally, they're the natural drug inside of you that you create on your own. It's something God gave you. You're like instead of trying to take a drug to make yourself feel better, you could just go for a run, and that is what God gave you. It releases endorphins into your body. It literally makes you feel better to go work out, emotionally, not just physically. What else? What do you do to manage stress?
Listen to music.
Music is huge. Yeah, all kinds of hobbies like that, but music is one that's listed a lot. Music is very centering. It helps you to just relax. It's usually got a natural rhythm to it, a natural beat. It helps to calm. Music, the old expression, music calms the savage beast, all right? We all have this way of we wire up, and music has a way of centering us back down. So just go run with your headphones, right? Put them in, go for a run. It makes sense, all right? What else? Friends. Why would that be helpful? Why is it helpful to talk and connect with your friends? Because it's the one thing you're needing the most, right? You need to feel connected. You don't have mama right next to you.
Are we talking about things that we actually do or things that we should do?
Aja, why don't you tell us what you actually do?
Well, I let it down not to anymore, but I used to eat my food.
Okay, and we're going to talk about stuff like that in just a slide or two. Yeah, there are negative ways of coping with stress. We're going to put food, not healthy food, all right, not food in the good sense, but we're talking food in the way that I was just talking about it, all right. We're going to put that over here with the drugs, with the alcohol, with negative ways that we sometimes cope with our anxiety, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. Another great one here, probably the most important stress managed strategy, and you don't want to hear this one because none of you do it. It's called sleep. It's called sleep. Now, here's the thing, is you want to do it in the middle of the day, like a bunch of vampires. You want to stay up all night and sleep all day, all right? But that's not good for a school schedule. So, huge part of stress management strategies is self-accountability, all right? Self-management. You don't have mama to put you to bed at night. You got to put yourself to bed. And then you got to wake yourself up. And then you got to tell yourself to go to class. You got to tell yourself to do these things. But being in a routine, all right, one of the best things that you can do for your stress is to get up at the same time every morning. I don't care if it's Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You get up at the same time every morning. You go to bed at the same time every night. If you would just do that one thing, as hard as that sounds and as ridiculous as it is, it's amazing how much anxiety and stress is relieved by just putting yourself on a sleep schedule. You ever heard of a sleep cycle? You familiar with those? They're needed. Like your body needs sleep cycles. Most of you need 3 sleep cycles a night. How do you know how long your sleep cycle is? You learned about sleep cycles before? Do you ever wake up in the middle of the night? Yes. All right. Usually, whatever time you wake up in the middle of the night, take that and either divide it by 2, or if it's earlier in the night, just take it for what it is. Okay, for example, all right, my sleep cycle is almost 3 hours. It's about 2 hours and 45 minutes for me to go through a full sleep cycle. So if I go to bed at 10 o'clock, let's see, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I'm almost guaranteed that at 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm just going to wake up. It's about 6 hours later. All right, not quite, about 3:30, because mine, like I said, is a little less than 6 hours. But about 3:30 in the morning, I'm just going to wake up, be aware of where I am, roll over, go back to sleep. It's because I've had 2 sleep cycles. I've got 1 more to go, all right? 3 sleep cycles is really what you need at night. That first time you wake up, That first time you wake up in the middle of the night, you don't want to get up yet, right? Your body's needing 1 more. When your alarm is going off in the morning and you don't want to get out of bed because you're still in the middle of a sleep cycle, the only way to fix that is you got to back up the other end. It's just you can't, if you're going to make it to your 8 o'clock class, we're just talking logic here, right? You got to back it up. Sleep in on the front end. All that sleep that you want at 7 o'clock, 7:30, just get it on the front end. And if you can discipline yourself to do that, you will be amazed at how much of your stress levels just go, because you just got some sleep. They do an experiment on a kitty. We always talk about all the cruel experiments in psychology class. They did one with this cat where they did sleep deprivation. They put it in the middle of a tub of water and stuck it on a little perch that's just big enough that if it's awake, it can stand there like this. But if it falls asleep, it falls off and falls into the water. What do you think happened to that cat after a few days? Yeah, it literally went crazy. Like the cat went crazy and died. This is what you're doing to yourself. Put yourself to bed. All right? So, exercise, regular sleep habits, music, hobbies, right? Doing things that you like to do, talking with your friends. You know what to do. You know how to relieve your anxiety. You just have to actually do it. All right, let's talk for a minute about drug and alcohol abuse. Big numbers here. Let's talk about America at large, because that's what these statistics are. All right, this is everything from Baptist College of Florida to the University of Wisconsin. You know what I'm saying? I mean, this is everybody. So 82.2% of college students report drinking in the past year. That's basically pretty much everybody, because the other ones are probably lying. 43.9 report binge drinking in the past 2 weeks. Now, what's the difference between binge drinking and just I had a drink in the past year? Exactly. It has to do with blood alcohol content. It has to do with how much you drink within a certain period of time. And binge drinking usually ends with the whole passing out on the floor or throwing up, some sort of, hopefully you throw up and don't pass out on the floor. If you see somebody passed out on the floor, that's the ones you need to worry about. All right, they're the ones that are headed for the coma. Throwing up is good because the body's rejecting the poison, okay? But 40, that's almost half. Almost half of college students report binge drinking within the past 2 weeks. 18.1 report as current marijuana users. 11% report using other illegal drugs within the past year. So, this is huge. All right, obviously this is how college students are coping. This is not a positive coping skill. I mean, number one, we're talking about people who are under the age of 21. So already you're talking it's illegal. Okay, it's already, that's bad right there, regardless of your religious or moral view on it. It's not even legal. They're not even, most of them aren't even 21 yet. But this is not just about the 82% that report drinking. It's the half of them are binge drinking. We're drinking to the point of inducing comas. So, not good. So how do we create strategies for positive peer pressure, creating peer accountability, confrontation of social norm perceptions? Here's the thing about this age group. Remember what we were talking about? The peer pressure comes back in force at this age. Right? Peer pressure is rampant. But unlike the kind of peer pressure that comes in middle school, college students are much more easily swayed in the positive direction. You guys are awesome at positive peer pressure. If you decide that you want to jump on a bandwagon, you will swing your entire age group. Anybody ever heard of the End It movement? Who's behind that? 40-somethings? No. College kids. This is what we're talking about. Peer pressure at this age is intense. But unlike middle school, it is just as intense in the positive direction once you light a fire in that direction. So that's hope. Okay? What that means is that programs that are implemented that just simply educate college students on there's a better way to do this, or let's go get passionate. That's why we call it passion. Let's go. You guys are looking for something to latch onto. You're also looking for something to define your generation. At this stage, college students, remember what we said, you're not making it up. You are defining who you are right here, right now. And you put that together with this whole intimacy versus isolation thing and the fact that you're wanting so badly to connect with one another, this age group needs something to be passionate about. Just pick the right thing. Pick the right stuff and then get together in a group and be passionate about it, because you guys have the power to sway a huge tidal wave that takes these kind of numbers and is like, let's go do something positive. Let's define our generation by what we were amazing at. 82% of us participated in the End It movement to fight slavery all over the world. That's the kind of stuff that you guys are capable of. You just have to get fired up about it. You have to move the peer pressure in a positive direction. And I would think that there's no place easier to do it than on this campus. But I'm going to tell you something. When you come to chapel, you all come to chapel. When you stop coming to chapel, you all stop coming to chapel. You ever notice that? You do everything in a group. You do even on this campus, you're going to do everything in a group. So maybe this isn't our issue. Okay, there's no frat parties going on around here. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist at all. It just means this is not the core of the issue. But is there negative peer pressure and is there positive peer pressure, even on this campus? Yes. So what do you guys want to be known for? What do you guys want to spur one another on towards? Because whatever that is, it's going to fight back against the depression and the anxiety that so many of the kids here are tempted to get sucked down into. All right? So figure something out to be passionate about and then get everybody else excited about it. It's a lot of fun. Just to mention some other self-destructive type addictive behaviors that can happen that are very common. Cutting and self-harm. You know what cutting is? Do you know that when I was in college and high school, we never even heard of it? Very much has a contagion effect. What that means is as people hear about it, they get curious about it. Some numbers are as high as 38% of college students report a lifetime occurrence of cutting. That means at some point in their life they did it. It doesn't necessarily mean they're a current cutter or that they're doing it every day. But 38% are saying, at one point, I experimented with that. Unheard of. Just 20 years ago, unheard of. It's amazing how things come around and become popular that are so dangerous. Also, eating disorders. Using food. Aja brought up the eating disorders. Using food to cope with stress and depression. If I can't find someone, I'll just use food to make me feel better. It's a comfort, all right? It's comforting. Helps with depression. It helps with anxiety, but it's generally not a good thing. Pornography, sexual addiction, same thing. It's a coping skill. It's an escape, right? It's a way to say, I'm just going to check out for a little while. And then also relationship addictions. You know that person that goes through one boyfriend after another, one girlfriend after another? All right, just constantly breaking up, moving on to the next one. That's a relationship addiction where I have to have somebody. All of these things, what we're doing here is we are trying to meet my need outside of the way God designed. Rather than just simply taking a deep breath, trusting that God's got my past, present, and future. Instead of saying, I trust that He's bringing me the one, and that all of these things are going to come to pass in His timing. Instead, we panic. We panic, and we look for other ways to try to meet our needs. Jeremiah, he talks about the cisterns. He says, my people have committed 2 sins. He says, they've forsaken the well of living water and instead have dug for themselves cisterns that can't hold water. Do you know what a cistern is? They would dig these holes in the ground, right? And then they just have to wait on the rain to come. They didn't have a spring. They didn't have any water to tap into. They would just hope that it would rain. And if it rained, their cistern would fill up and they could go in there and they could pull out some water and refresh themselves. So the image here is a cracked cistern. What happens to a cracked cistern when the rain comes in? It goes right out, right? So the image here is right over here, there's a spring of living water, gushing. All I got to do is turn towards it and enjoy the water. But instead, I dig a cracked cistern. That's what these are, right? They're cracked cisterns. They are never going to satisfy. They're never going to meet your need. They're never going to come to the end of it and go, finally, I feel better. Think about it. When did you finally eat something that made all your pain go away? When did you finally cut yourself that one time and went, there it is, got it? When was that last time I'm ever going to look at pornography? When was it finally enough? Right? When did you meet that one guy? He made that promise, and he said he wouldn't break my heart. Here we go again. Okay? These are cracked cisterns. And the only way to rebuke these things, and these are not necessarily as common as the drug and alcohol. I mean, when you think college kids, you think partying. All right? But all of this stuff is right there, too. And you could put the drug and alcohol right in this same list. It's a cracked cistern. All right? The only way to survive the college years is to cling tightly to Christ. It's to stay in that well of living water. It's to say, God is creating intimacy. And the more I seek after intimacy with Him, the more secure I get in that relationship, the more secure I'll be to just go, I know, Mom, I love you. I'll be home next weekend, but it's all good. I'm making good choices. We're going to be friends for life, but I'm branching out, all right? I'm secure. And then the more secure I am to go, God's going to bring me my new family. Whoever she is, whoever he is, God's got it in control. See, I'm building my intimacy with me in my relationship with Christ. And then from that place of security, all this transition, it doesn't feel so rocky. all this being in the middle, it doesn't overwhelm me so much. Because I feel like God's got this. I'm secure. I'm secure in my relationship with Him. And now I'm able to just simply relax and reach behind and reach forward without feeling pulled apart. Right? All right. So one of the main things, if we're really caught up in this whole intimacy versus isolation, and you are, because I see it all the time, one of the biggest things that you need from counselors, from one another, your wise advice is about relationships, right? It's the number one question on your heart. How do I have a good relationship? How do I keep a healthy relationship? How do I get in a healthy relationship? And then what if I figure out, even if it's healthy, it's just not the right one? And then how do I get out of it? These are the questions we ask. All right? So we have a need for general healthy relating. Romantic and non-romantic relationships. This is not just, you can get hyper-focused on finding that one. But every time you have a really good heart-to-heart fight with your roommate, maybe there was something you needed to confront, and assertively you did it. You're practicing for marriage. You don't even realize that. But in your dorm, in those relationships, you're practicing. I never will forget when my husband and I first got married, he talks about how it just freaked him out that my toothbrush was on the counter. It's the dumbest little things when you first get married that it's just weird. You got somebody that's living in the same house with you, and there's just a billion little things that can drive you nuts. You ever feel like you got a billion little things about your roommate that drive you nuts? You're practicing. Somehow we have this idea that we're going to live in relationship with other people, but somehow when we get married, it's just none of that stuff's going to be there. It's just going to be perfect and amazing, and we're never going to get each other's nerves. They're never going to leave their clothes on the floor. They're never going to do all these things that drive us crazy living in the dorm. You are practicing your future relationship both with your spouse and your children and all those other significant relationships that you will establish. You're practicing mother-in-law relationships. You're just practicing relationships. You're practicing being in close proximity to the other people that you can't get away from. And how do I just keep my cool and be assertive about my needs without being a total jerk, without acting like it's the end of the world, but just saying, here's your space, here's my space, let's all get along. It's great practice being in an environment like this. Think about the idea here of just this funny little, it's like a little fishbowl world that we have right here on this campus. A little microcosm of maybe a future church that you're going to be a part of. Right? Maybe a future job environment that you're going to be a part of. If you're not learning in this little sweet bubble protected environment, sorry, but it just is, okay? But if you're not learning in this environment how to just get along with people, you're going to struggle when you get out there. All right? Because it just gets harder. It doesn't get any easier than this right here. So I say that as a challenge. All right? If you're struggling in your relationships, work on them. What do you need to change in order to be relating better with others? Do you need to reach out more? Do you need to put up firmer boundaries? Are you letting people in too close? Are you being too picky? You having trouble just letting people be people? People don't stop being people. This is permanent, all right? And people are crazy, right? You just got to let them be crazy. This doesn't stop. It doesn't go away, all right? So if it's already driving you nuts, then the point is not to figure out how to fix all of y'all. The point is for me to figure out, how do I give more grace? How do I give more grace? All right? How do I just get along? Codependency issues. Let's just talk about this for just a minute. All right? Codependency issues look like this. Hi, I want to be your friend. I need you. Don't ever leave me. I've got you around the neck. Don't leave me. Okay. Intimacy versus isolation. Another way that we panic is we think we found somebody that we're going to attach to for life, and whether they like it or not, we're attached. I texted you 20 times in the last 2 hours, and you haven't texted me back. Maybe that's a hint. Right? Maybe you're a little much. Okay? This requirement that you must be here to meet my needs. We do that to each other at this age. All right? We expect too much from each other. Yes, you need each other. Yes, you need attachments. You need healthy attachments. But you don't need them like a chokehold. All right? If you're holding on too tightly, that pushes people away. After a while, they just get tired of it. It's sucking the life out of them. You're too much. I need some space from you. All right? If somebody has ever told you that they need space from you, you might be having some problems with codependency. Codependency is basically you just saying, I said I need intimacy. Now, you, don't leave me. All right? You have to learn to hold people like this. All right? I love you. We're in relationship. But it's equal. It's free. And if you don't text me back immediately, I'm not going to freak out because I just trust you. I figure you're in class or having a conversation, or maybe you don't have cell service. It's possible. It happens. You know? Okay? Next level would be doing this with a significant other. Right? You get into a relationship. Maybe you're not the one doing it. Maybe you're the one it's getting done to. You ever been in a very controlling relationship? All right? They get into a relationship and they've got to hover. I mean, they got to know where you are every minute of every day. If you don't respond immediately, you feel guilt. You're like you're walking on eggshells. Okay, if you're in a relationship where you feel like you're walking on eggshells, that's a dangerous relationship. I can't say the wrong thing. I can't do the wrong thing for fear of that choke coming on stronger. Okay, that's not a healthy relationship. It's called codependency issues, and you need to come talk to me or Tanya or somebody about it, all right? Because that's the kind of stuff that you have to carefully extract yourself from. It's not a healthy person. People grow. I'm not saying people can't get healthier. I'm just saying it's probably not going to happen with you, because once that chokehold has happened, I don't often see it relax and get normal. That's just, I'm just saying. Doesn't happen very often. Other things that you're dealing with is stages of grief and loss. You may not realize it, but you're grieving your childhood. You're not a kid anymore. You're not a kid anymore. There's a lot of loss that comes along with waking up and realizing that you're now an adult. Also, grandparents, right around this stage is when you start losing grandparents, and that's a big deal. Abuse and trauma issues. Let me tell you, now we're almost done here, and I know if y'all need to leave, it's no big deal. You're not hurting my feelings at all. But here's one of the big things that I want you to understand for yourself and for your roommates. All right? Last big important point. If someone has had childhood trauma and abuse, it can be physical abuse, it can be sexual abuse, it can even be things like a parental divorce. All right? But if you have unresolved issues that go along with all of that, let's go to the extreme for just a minute. We're going to go over here. Let's just say childhood sexual abuse. All right? What happens is someone comes into college, they may not even remember. All right? But right around 18, 19, 20 years old, they start having nightmares. Little memories, vague recollections. All right? Stuff that they've pushed down and put in a box and thought that they saw it in a movie once. Okay? What happens is right about this age, when a trauma happens, you know what shock is, right? You've ever been in a car wreck and the doctor says your body went into shock. In the immediate sense, you couldn't feel any pain. But boy, the next day you feel it when the shock wears off. All right? Your body does something similar in the emotional sense. It's emotional shock. When a trauma happens that's so severe, literally, emotionally, you can just shut down. You don't feel it. Sometimes you literally forget it. It's like it never happened. And you're just walking along, and all of a sudden, 19 years old, you just have a dream. It's like, what was that? And what's happening is, as your brain and your emotional self matures, subconsciously you'll get a trigger that it's time. It's time to deal with it. It's time to remember. Your body is coming out of emotional shock. Unfortunately, while you're dealing with all of this other stuff, transitionally and developmentally, if you've ever been traumatized, this is when you're going to deal with that too. It's sort of like bubbles that start to rise to the surface. You ever shaken a soda, and the bubbles start to come up? They'll come up a little bit at a time, and then all of a sudden, and then before you know it, it's all spewing out. All right? If you start to have things like that coming up, it's just talking about it. All right? Don't be afraid of that. It's okay. It's okay. What happens is your body needs to process what happened. You just need to talk about it. You need to get it out. You need to go and tell your story. So that's the kind of thing that you might, for yourself or for somebody else that you see that's going through that, you would say, let me take you to the counselor. Let's just go talk to somebody. All right? Somebody's waking up with nightmares. Somebody's having memories. Somebody's starting to cry or deal with things that they've never dealt with before. They just need to talk about it. Emotionally, you ever felt like you need to throw up and you pace? You know what I'm talking about? You're like, I need to throw up. I need to throw up. I don't want to throw up. I hate to throw up. And so you pace and you fight it and you pace. And you know that if you would just throw up, you would feel better. All right? And then you finally do throw up, and guess what? You feel better. All right? We do the same thing emotionally. All right? We'll hold it in, and we somehow think that if we just don't let all that emotion out, that it's going to be okay. Just hold it in. Just hold it in. And we will pace emotionally. We can do this for years. Years. Just pacing emotionally. All right? Emotionally, you have to throw up. How do we throw up emotionally? You cry. You get mad. You scream. You talk about it. You spill your guts. All right? You get it all out. And then you feel better. And you're like, why didn't I do that like 4 years ago? I feel so much freer. I feel so much lighter, Sometimes you need to talk about it more than one time. It depends on what the trauma was. But if you've got something that's just bugging you and you're like, I've never told anybody that. The very fact that you've never told anybody, that's what makes it so significant. If it was no big deal, you'd have been talking about it all the time. All right? So if you're telling yourself, it's no big deal and I've never told anybody that, or there's shame there that's keeping you from talking about it, that is the thing you need to talk about. That's how you get unstuck. That's how you move on. It may be the thing that's holding you back, is that you need to go throw up emotionally. And then just education on healthy sexuality in general. That's the other thing that you're dealing with at this stage. It's just understanding. Now, I know that you guys, because you're coming from a Christian worldview, you have a much more healthy view of sexuality. Let me tell you something. Your age group in general does not. All right? If you know kids your age who are not as educated as you are on a Christian worldview, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They have no sense of decency or comment. They have no sense of understanding of saving sexuality for marriage. When I'm doing talks with younger people about just making good choices, I talk to middle schoolers. This is what we talk about. All right, if you can imagine sticky glue on two pieces of paper, when it's come together, it sticks, right? And then you can't hardly pull it apart. God created sexuality. It releases endorphins in your body. And in that sexuality, it's meant to create a bonding for life. But what happens is, as you go and bond over here, and then you try to rip that paper apart. I'll do this literally with a visual. I will actually use paper and glue. And when you pull that paper apart, what happens? It's all kind of ratty looking, and it hurts. It's very painful to have to pull apart from a sexual relationship, because it's not how God designed it. Well, now what's happened to my glue? I'm going to go bring another piece of paper in, and I'll bring this other piece of paper, and I'll stick it, and it'll usually stick. Sometimes it'll stick 3 or 4 times. I'll go through 3 or 4 pieces of paper and do this. But every time, it's easier to pull off. Not quite so painful that time. Stick again. Even easier to pull off. Not quite so painful that time, right? Well, then what happens when you finally find the one? You're not so sticky anymore. All right? That's what those endorphins, that's what those chemicals are for. All right? So educating beyond just yourself, but being a missionary to your age group on what healthy sexuality looks like and why. Why do we fight so hard to stay pure? It's because it's important. It's because it's important. It has implications for your future marriage. That's why. All right? And I know, and I say this to middle schoolers even. All right? No, kissing is not the same thing as having sex. But does kissing release endorphins in your body? It's the same stuff. It's hormones. It's endorphins. You are attaching yourself to another person. I'm not going to stand up and say no kissing. Okay? That's not the point. All right? But the point is be protective of your glue. Be protective of your stickiness. All right? All of that is made. It's meant for your one. It's meant to bond you for life. It's supposed to be super glue. And if you leak it all over the place, you're losing some of that. All right? But just educating on healthy sexuality, very important. And that is the end. So what time is it? 7:10. All right. Well, we'll do about 5 minutes. And if y'all have any questions or anything that you want to go back over. No? If there were any part of this that we were doing sort of a part 2 on, what would be something that you would like more information on?
I heard someone say transitions.
Transitions?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, moving forward and back out of here. You know, we talked a little bit about the generativity stage that comes next, and will I matter? You know, that's a big deal too. Answering that question of will I matter?
I think maybe going more in depth on all the negative ways of dealing with things, maybe more in depth on what the positive side looks like.
Mm-hmm.
I feel pretty messed up. Don't know where to go.
Don't know where to go.
From here. And Tanya can't have all of us.
That's true. She can. It is too much. And I right. Well, and just if you go briefly back over the, what was it, 3 or 4 that we talked about there, we were talking about some negative, let's see if I can find it here. Where were we? Right here. Oh, that's not helpful. Hold on. This is what I'm trying to do. That's what I'm trying to do. Okay. Okay, let's say you had mentioned the eating disorders, right? Using food to try to find comfort. Using food as a method of control. See, what happens is all of this stuff out here is out of control, so I will look for something I can control. If I can control my food intake, then that makes me feel better, all right? Cutting is also a form of control, all right? Has to do with, it's connected to trauma and it's connected to chaos. I can't control all of this out here, but I can control when and where I hurt myself. I can't, you know, they hurt me, I couldn't control that, but I can control when I decide to feel pain. But if you think just on eating disorders in general, all right, when you're rebuking an eating disorder, there's underlying issues going on there that you have to deal with. Number one, is there trauma? You know, is there depression? Is there anxiety? Why am I eating my feelings? Why am I using food to comfort me? So starting with just recognizing it. A huge part of this is just awareness. It really is. Just calling out your own stuff. Can you name your own stuff? If you can't name your own stuff, you're not ready yet. You gotta be able to call it out first. And then once you put the words on it, from there you can start dealing with the stuff that's going on underneath it, getting down to the root of the problem. Sometimes it's literally just the trauma of where you are in life. Sometimes it's deeper trauma. You can be traumatized as a child just by a parental divorce. And then you come to college and you need to find that one, but you're terrified that you're going to pick the wrong one because your parents got divorced, right? And then as you go through 3, 4, 5 different dating relationships, you just re-traumatize yourself over and over and over again, reinforcing this idea that maybe I'm not worthy of a good relationship. Maybe all I'll ever have is what my parents had. There's 100 different ways these things can work themselves out in your life. But almost every time, and for me personally, I've never found one that was an exception. It always makes sense, right? Whatever you're choosing in a negative sense to cope with all of that intolerable emotion that's inside, it usually makes sense when you go over here and you look at, oh, well, your parents got divorced and you're scared you won't find the one. So you've gone through how many boyfriends this semester? It makes sense when you look at it, but sometimes you do need that other person to help make sense out of it with you. And it is helpful to go in. This is what counselors are for. This is why we have this entire program. Because we're training people who know how to go out there and listen and help people get unstuck. It's not enough sometimes to just give somebody a Bible verse and tell them to memorize it. They need some help. All right? They need help knowing how to apply that scripture. They need help knowing how to understand what that means practically in their life. All right? People don't always connect their own dots. Doesn't mean that what you're giving them isn't true. You can hand somebody the truth. Same scripture, real close to the one we were talking about with the cisterns. All right? Jeremiah says, I did not recognize that this thing I held in my right hand was a lie. You ever grasped onto a lie? I have people walk in my office all the time. They've got a lie like this with a chokehold. I'm like, it's a lie. They won't let it go. Jeremiah describes this. I didn't understand. I was grasping onto this thing that was a lie. It can be very difficult to recognize and let go of your own lies. And so what happens is when we give someone a scripture truth, is it true? Uh-huh. Are they connecting the dots? Uh-uh. They're holding on to their lies, right? And then we've just added guilt because they know they're supposed to believe the truth. So now they can't figure out how to apply it. Well, it's because you're holding on to a lie. You're going to have to let go of this first before you can receive the truth. Okay? So this is really what we do. Counseling is intensive discipleship. That's what it is. It's what it is. Rather than it's all important. Everybody has their place in the body of Christ. All right? Every ministry in the body of Christ is important. But specifically, counseling gets one-on-one with one person and says, here's your journey with Christ. Why are you not taking a step forward? I'm not worried about this over here. I want to know where you are today and what do you need to do to get right here by tomorrow? What's that one thing that's got you hung up? Where are you stuck? All right? This is why it's a method for intensive discipleship. One-on-one. All right, well, with that, we will close. If you do have questions for me, I'll stick around for a few minutes. But otherwise, it was fun. See you later.